Welcome back to the DMZ America podcast from May 11th. I'm Ted Rall coming to you from the left.
I'm Scott Stantis coming to you from the right. So the Pulitzer Prizes, the biggest awards in journalism, were shoveled out this week. It's the only way I can put it, man. It's just like, what a fucking joke. So many of them were. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And to be specific, the category formerly known as editorial cartooning, what is it known as now, Ted? It's like graphic.
Illustrative, graphic, common, crappity, common, cherry.
Yeah, bullshittery, drawn with a pencil.
Yes.
Ish. Anyway, so they've changed the name to just mean can be virtually anything. And the winner this year is, I'm stunned. I'm absolutely gobsmacked that the winner was from the New York Times.
By the way, there was an article that just came out in a very timely manner today that found that in recent years, 40% of all prizes, all Pulitzer Prizes go either to the New York Times or the Washington Post, both of which, of course, have an outsized influence on it. I mean, the Pulitzer Prize is based at my alma mater, Columbia University. And of course, obviously, Columbia is in New York here where I am. And so the Washington Post and the New York Times always have tons of jurors on the panel. I guess we should probably explain a little bit how this works, right? So first of all, no one's nominated to the Pulitzer. People always say, oh, you get nominated. No, you don't. You apply. So if you don't apply, you don't get a Pulitzer. And then what happens is that every category of the prize has a committee for that category. So for example, biography. There will be 3 or 4 jurors who could be from any newspaper or even freelancers or media organization, typically newspapers, who get together and sort through all the biography entries and theoretically read all the biographies. And then they're tasked with recommending 3 finalists for the Pulitzer Prize. And so no matter what happens to those 3 people, they can always say that they were a finalist in the Pulitzer Prize, which happened to me once in 1996. Then all of those prizes, all of those finalists lists for feature commentary, editorials, photography, playwright, whatever, poetry, it all goes up to the big stage, to the big committee, which I think has like about 15 people. It has typically big ass notables like Thomas Friedman of the columnist for the New York Times, people like Arthur Sulzberger, just people of that ilk are up there. And then they choose for each category one finalist, and that person wins the award. Now, there are exceptions to this. The big committee can decide to not choose any of the finalists, which happened a couple of years ago. In our category, they decided they didn't like any of the cartoonists, so they did not give it. And then also they can say, oh, well, we don't like any of the finalists, but we are going to pick one out of our asshole. And that's what they did to me in 1996. It was down to me and 2 other guys, and they picked one out of their asshole instead. And they gave it to him. I've always wanted to go to his office and visit my Pulitzer, because I'm pretty sure that's my Pulitzer. So that's basically how it works. There's all sorts of sordid stories about how these decisions are made. For example, we have a colleague we don't want to, expose him. We don't want to burn him as a source, but suffice it to say that his application was in a digital format, and he was able to tell that no one from the committee had ever opened it or read it. So that means he knows that it was, his $75 application fee was completely wasted. We know that, for example, I know from someone who was on the panel that entire categories of work are sometimes shunted aside because someone just doesn't understand it or doesn't care for that category, and they're never read by the other members of the jurors. Sometimes there's been stories of someone arriving at in the morning with a cartoon that they cut out of the newspaper that they liked, and they show it to everybody, and they decide right on the spot, without looking at the other entries, at any of the entries, to give that cartoonist the award so they can kick off early for drinks. They're very cavalier about how they do this. They also choose members of the committee that are often very unqualified for for the selection. I mean, like, Scott, some examples.
The year that this is ego, but I had a very good year. It should have been. I think the work should have been taken seriously. I had a number of people in the know who thought the same thing. But the jurors, not one juror that year was either an editorial page editor, a commentary editor, nor a cartoonist. So that means none of the jurors had experience looking at.
Wasn't one like a photographer or something?
One was a photographer, and another one was a freelance technical writer. It's like,
because that's almost like editorial cartooning.
Very similar, except in absolutely no possible way. So yeah, the editorial cartoon category has always sort of been, treated like an ugly stepchild. The category is now, by the way, called illustrated reporting and commentary. Now, the winner was Mona Shalabi, who, and we're going to try not to make this sound like sour grapes, but come on, go check it out for yourself. It's a long edit, and it's only one piece about how rich is Jeff Bezos. Really, really rich. How rich, Ted? Well, let me tell you, really rich. Now, you may ask yourself, just how rich is Jeff Bezos? And I'll tell you, and it just goes on. And in fact, I would argue that they show like a big tank compared to like a turtle, but the drawing is so small and not very competent that it shows that, you don't even get that sense of scale. So it doesn't even make the point it's trying to make, which is really not a point at all, other than Jeff Bezos, really rich. But she worked at the New York Times. Ted, the juror, the chairman of the jury was, take a guess what newspaper he worked for. That's right, the New York Times.
Bing, 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 bing.
And there are two runner-ups, and one of the runners-up works at the Washington Post. The work is really underwhelming. And guess what? Where one of the other jurors worked? Ted? Yes, the juror worked for the Washington Post. So two of the jurors had represented newspapers where two of the finalists were chosen. I'm not saying that there was any, funny business or that this was collusion, but it certainly looks awfully bad. And
it shouldn't be. Honestly, I don't think I think a juror should be forced to recuse himself or herself if any of the entries is from their member, from the organization that they work for.
Well, they're supposed to.
Yeah, they never do.
No, they're supposed to. Well, look at Meg Greenfield. Great example. She ran the Pulitzer Prizes for over a decade. She was the editorial page editor.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Famous editorial page editor for the Washington Post.
Right. And she had a salon. She ran out of her house where she'd have all these high.
Wait, she was the publisher, wasn't she?
No. She's editorial page editor. Okay. You're thinking of Kathy Graham.
Oh, that's right. I always confuse those two because they do seem very similar types.
Yes.
Socialites.
Greenfield had a salon in her townhome in Georgetown, once, I believe, Friday or Saturday nights, and all the hoi polloi of the who's who of Washington, D.C. would attend, and she would invite select journalists. Okay, move forward to the Pulitzer Prize. She decides one year that none of the finalists are worthy of the Pulitzer Prize, so throws all of them out, including a cartoonist in Connecticut by the name of Bob Englehart. And in fact, he did have an amazing year. Ted and I will disagree that what they did. The jury decided Bob Englehart did the best work of anyone in the country. It's foolish to send up two more finalists. It's just Bob Englehart. May Greenfield sees this, gets furious because, well, Bob Greenfield doesn't work at the Washington Post, throws out their recommendation in
Englehart.
the What's that?
Bob Englehart.
What did I say?
Greenfield.
Oh, Bob Englehart throws it out, and May Greenfield chooses as the winner for the Pulitzer Prize that year her block, cartoonist for
Dun,
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 dun, dun, dun, dun, dun, the Washington Post. It was his third fucking Pulitzer, handed to him on a silver platter because his boss decided that he was better and she knew better than anybody else. So anyone who looks at the Pulitzer Prizes as like and unfortunately has the reputation of being the journalism award.
Yeah.
It's not, folks. It really isn't.
No. And I've been saying, we've been arguing about this for years. I think maybe you're a little closer to my point of view now, in that, I think a prize is only as good as its list of previous winners. And if you look at, if you told me, it's Ted, congratulations, you're up for the Banana Brain Prize. And I'd be like, I've never heard of the Banana Brain Prize. And I looked at the list and it was all a bunch of wanks. I might not be so hot to get the Banana Brain Prize. And the list of winners, and I don't mean just in cartooning, but really across any category that I'm really familiar with, has been getting increasingly unimpressive over the years. And now, I've arrived at that Elvis Costello. I used to be disgusted. Now I'm just amused kind of
yeah, me too.
phase, because, so Ms. Chalabi, congratulations to her, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is that, look, she didn't deserve it, because there's a lot better work out there. I mean, this category encompasses New Yorker gag cartoons. Many of those are more insightful and smarter than the work that she submitted. It includes editorial cartooning and our colleagues, and we all, present company excluded, there's a lot of really good editorial cartooning out there, many of which I can think of probably 10 names that at least that would be, actually all of them would have been better than that. Yeah. Even the worst in our profession. And we have some pretty bad colleagues. Then there's, it's just that it's like, yeah, it's subjective until it's so crazy that it's not subjective. And and that's the problem here. Then there's also the, runner up. We have our colleague and our friend, Matt Davis was one of the runners up. He was a finalist. Congratulations to him. Although I always say, he's a previous winner, and I think it's a bad move. It's a big risk to apply for the Pulitzer after you've won, because of precisely the danger of what might happen to Matt. Like Matt, previous winner, is now a finalist. And so, it's one thing to be like, I'm a former finalist. What's the worst that can happen? I could be a finalist again. But if you're a previous winner and then you're a finalist, that's like, it makes it look like your career is sort of starting to go down. I wouldn't want that. If I ever won one of these things, and I guess I never will, because I'm never going to apply again. I have not applied every year recently. I did apply this year, but it's very clear that, by the way, we've been dancing around this. The Pulitzers have assumed a woke quality in recent years. It's pretty clear that they have a strong disfavor for cis white males. They just don't want us. And I guess just because we ran everything for hundreds of thousands of years, somehow it's payback time. But I wasn't there all those years. Damn it. And I know that there's literally no work I could possibly do, or that any white guy could possibly do. There, I said it, that would be seriously considered in our category, I think. And I think so. Matt was lucky as a white guy to get up there. Then also there was a third finalist. Oh boy,
Pia Zadora or something.
And that was sad. That's
the Washington Post. And the stuff, and honestly, sad. Folks, go to pulitzer.org and you can just go on the tab says winners, and you can actually see the portfolios, and hey, contact us and tell us we're full of shit.
happily.
Yeah, we would, and tell us why we're full of shit. Don't just say you're full of shit because we get that. We both have children.
Yeah, actually, you know what you could do? I think you can record on your phone if you have a smartphone. You can record your question or your comment to us, and if you were to tweet it at us, we could play it on the pod,
Oh, I'd love
which would be a
that.
little
Love
better.
that.
Because if you don't do it that way, if you read it and it's negative, I'm going to totally read it like in a making fun of your voice, the way that Trump did about Gene Carroll yesterday. So it's probably better that you do it that way. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you could do.
But
Okay,
by the
you
way,
do that.
who were the judges on our category this year? I'm kind of like I was looking for that.
Oh well, let me tell you, Ted. Give me a second to
Let's
call
hear.
this up.
Yeah, illustrated reporting and commentary. By the
The
way,
jury was. Are you ready?
uh,
The chairman was Steve Dwinnis, who's the deputy managing editor of the New York Times. Also, the jurors: Kathleen McElroy, professor, and Frank A. Bennick Jr., chair in journalism at the University of Texas at Austin.
okay.
Raghuram Vadarivu is the senior editor, storytelling, The Marshall Project.
What?
Okay, you want me to say it again? He's the senior editor, storytelling, The Marshall Project.
But what?
Let's go on.
Okay, yeah, let's.
Amaria, National Visual Enterprise editor of the Washington Post, which means she was the direct editor of the person who was a runner-up.
That's fucking unbelievable.
And finally,
except that it isn't, but it is.
Yeah. The most disappointing of all, Kevin Sayers, a former Pulitzer Prize winner, editorial cartoonist for the Charlotte Observer.
Wait, there were 5 jurors this year?
Yeah, there usually are.
Oh, I've seen it as few as 3.
I've seen that too. I mean, I know from talking to my editor friends who have served as jurors that they actually vie to be on the cartooning category when it was just that, because you just looked at cartoons. You could finish quickly and go have drinks.
Yeah, I'm not sure they even really do look at all the cartoons.
Well, we
don't.
We mentioned our friend earlier. They definitely don't. I can guarantee you that my submission on several years was not looked at.
I don't think I'm really ever looked at. And it's funny, inside baseball, and we should probably wrap it up here, Scott, is the fact that that whenever you ask your friend, or you thought they were your friend, who is on one of the committees, they will always, you'll always be like, so, were there any comments about my work? And Scott, I know you're the same as me. I would actually really welcome some negative feedback. If someone said, well, the thing is, Ted, what really kept you behind was blah, 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 then it would help me know maybe I could do something to improve my work, or maybe I just have to accept that it's like, maybe it's my politics and they don't like me or whatever. But, it's being snubbed and not being, it's kind of like being, you're getting an A or an F in a class, but you're never given any comments by your teacher. You just don't know really how you can get any better. You're just it's very disconcerting and kind of evil. Anyway, your friends will always say, oh yes, enter name of Ted or Scott here. Like, you were very high in the mix. How high? How high? 17th? Oh no, much higher than that. 10th? Higher. 4th? Not 4th, like 5th, like maybe 6th, 5th, something like that. Oh, really? Like, well, what happened there? Like, why, how did I get cut? How did I get culled? Well, they just decided to go in another direction. What direction? What was the unted direction?
Yes.
A direction that didn't involve you.
Yeah, no, it's usually such tap dancing, such bullshittery that I don't even ask anymore, because it's like, inevitably they will say either 6th, or you're in the top 6 or top 8. Usually the top 8 seems to be the sweet spot for people who are lying to you.
And usually there's about 50 people in the top 8.
It's amazing. Yeah, it was the top 7, and then a 42-way tie for 8th. It's Yeah, I just
Yeah.
and I did not enter just to make things
It
clear.
feels good though when you don't enter, because you're like, especially when you look at it and you're like, well, I would not have won anyway. I saved $75. Jen Sorensen, our colleague, she doesn't enter. I think she still doesn't enter. And she said every year I win a $75 micro Pulitzer Prize for not entering.
Precisely. I mean, it really, I mean, and you talked me out of it. I'm kind of shocked that you entered. I feel kind of snookered now. But anyway, I didn't
Well,
because would
I
you
was in a
want to win
bad way.
the
I needed some emotional. I was looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah, no kidding. Because I was, but I agree with you. I think I'm not. Why would I enter? What's the point? I mean, and if you win, you're right up there with people who write things like, Jeff Bezos, he's rich,
So rich.
so rich. You know how rich? I'll show you a
Well,
dozen times
and the thing
how
is,
rich he
you
is.
could say like, okay, but the thing is, there's definitely Jeff Bezos's spectacular wealth is certainly a worthwhile topic for satire, commentary, insight, but there's none of that in this. It just shows basically how rich he is, but it doesn't suggest any solutions. It doesn't,
Yeah, should you tax him?
doesn't
Should
show it in
you
any kind of new way.
storm one of his yachts? I mean,
It
yeah,
doesn't editorialize it. Like, yeah, for example, it doesn't show how much he pays in taxes.
yeah.
So as opposed to the rest of us. So we just don't really know. It's like, yeah, so he's the richest guy. Well, I mean, someone's going to be the richest guy. So what? And how does this affect anything? There's just no insight. Um, and that's true about, Pia's work too. Unfortunately, it's all just spot illos. They're like clip art. They don't mean anything.
Very
Um,
good clip art, but clip
yeah,
art.
I thought they were. I've seen better clip art, you know, like the stuff that David Reese used in Get Your War On. Now that's good clip art.
All right. No, okay.
Anyway, yeah, I mean, so you basically the Pulitzers are bullshit, and they left us. We didn't leave them, but I think, I applied as a columnist too, and man, don't get me started on the column choices, but we don't have time for that. So another time, I'll
Okay.
whinge. All right,
Okay.
Scott, it was a pleasure. Where can people find all things Scott Stantis?
Well, they can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis, one word, see my editorial cartoons. You can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City and see my comic strip, a political comic strip, not surprising. You can also go to chicagotribune.com/opinion and see a gallery of the work I do for them. You can go to Dallas News and see the work I do for the Dallas Morning News. And first and above almost everything else, that's not true. We think everything's important, but Ted and I are involved in a project called Center Clip, and it's like mini podcasts, 30 seconds to 5 minutes long. And it's just really our audio responses to breaking news. And a number of other commentators are adding new ones every week. And it's really fantastic. I would love for you to get the app and let us know what you think, because I think it's fantastic. Ted posts about 1,700 times a day.
So,
So I'm jealous. I hate being out hustled, and you out hustle me by a lot. Anyway, so where can we, that's where you can see Scott Stantis. Where can we see all things Ted?
you go to raw.com. You can go and you can listen to the radio show that I do for Sputnik News, co-hosting with Manila Chan, called The Final Countdown. Just go Google Final Countdown, Sputnik, Ted Rall, some combination of that shit. And you can listen to it on Rumble. It's probably the easiest way, but you can also go to Sputnik's website and just listen live. It's Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to noon, but you can also, that's Eastern time, but you can also listen to the days, that day or yesterday's or whatever. They're archived at Rumble, so you don't have to listen to them in real time. They're also archived on the Sputnik website. You can go to whowhatwhy.org on Saturdays, and you can also check out some of my cartoons on sputniknews.com on Tuesdays and Thursdays. In fact, I have to get busy and draw one about Trump after we hang up the phone, Scott.
Okay. Well, there you have it, folks. All right. Cool.
Okay, then. All
I'll
right.
talk out.
A pleasure. Thank you for listening for contributing to the fantastic 101st edition of the DMZ America podcast.
And they said it wouldn't last.
Did they say that?
No one said that.
No one said anything, really.
No. They still
They
don't.
never do. Bye, Scott.
Bye, Ted.